The Synoid Simulor is the Cephalon Suda variant of the Simulor, a rifle that launches gravitational orbs. The Synoid Simulor is available for purchase from Cephalon Suda's offerings once you reach rank 5, for 125,000 standing. It can also be traded, so you can either purchase it or trade it for other Syndicate weapons. The Synoid Simulor launches orbs of gravitational force which explode on impact, or after 1 second. Shooting multiple orbs at the same spot will stack them and produce a vortex that damages enemies over time, but without status effects. Stacking 3 orbs will produce a gravitational well. Only 3 vortexes or wells can be active at the same time. The stacks can be detonated by using the Alt Fire button. The explosion radius scales with the number of orbs stacked. Shooting through the vortex or gravitational well grants bonus electricity damage, critical chance and critical damage. The gravitational vortex and well will also block enemy fire that passes through their center. The Synoid Simulor has the passive entropy effect associated with the Cephalon Suda Syndicate. Entropy is activated by accumulating 1000 affinity with the weapon. This can be from kills with the weapon, squad kills or ability use, while the weapon is equipped. Upon activation, all enemies within 25 meters receive 1000 magnetic damage with a guaranteed status effect. The player receives 25% of their base unmodded energy, and the base unmodded energy is increased by 25% for 30 seconds. This is useful for caster frames, and more useful for builds with high efficiency, but less energy reserves. Compared to the regular Simulor, the Synoid Simulor has overall higher stats. It has a low critical chance of 14% and an average critical multiplier. It has a high status chance of 35%. The Synoid Simulor deals magnetic damage, which explodes in a 5-meter radius and deals a guaranteed electricity proc. The explosion radius and damage increase with the number of orbs stacked. The explosions inflict self-stagger, but you have to be fairly close to the center of the explosion for it to trigger. The Synoid Simulor has 3 innate polarities, 1 Matter-I or V, 1 Naramon or Dash and 1 Vizarin or D polarity. I have a Synoid Simulor with 1 forma, and 1 with 5 formas. You don't need that many formas, I just ended up with too many while working on builds. 2 or 3 should be enough if you want to use the Exilus slot, or primed mods. The Exilus slot has a V polarity, so you can use terminal velocity. Increasing the projectile speed will make the orbs go farther, which can make it harder to stack them. Still, I find it's much nicer to use with more projectile speed. There are a couple of different ways that you can build this weapon. You could use it as a primer for your melee weapon, or even your secondary. I have it built for viral and radiation, since radiation doubles as soft crowd control. Firestorm is very useful on this weapon. You could use the primed version if you want to add another polarity. You could also build for heat and viral or corrosive, and replace high voltage with a Bane mod or even hunter munitions. The galvanized build I have actually needs only 1 forma, unless you want to use the Exilus slot or primed Bane mods. The build has no serration, since it relies on primary merciless and galvanized aptitude for damage. I still have hunter munitions on this build, and I'm using critical delay to increase critical chance. Primed Firestorm also effectively increases the chance of inflicting slash on more enemies at once, if you're facing a group of enemies. You could also use Arcane Avenger and the Vigilante mods on your Sentinel's weapon to increase critical chance. The Bane mods work well on this weapon, since they increase both the initial damage and the damage over time from status effects, in this case slash damage. I find that the Synoid Simulor is a very effective area of effect weapon against the Corpus. It deals magnetic damage which is effective against their shields, and it has a high status chance, so you can build it for toxin damage and bypass shields completely. So I have a special build for the Corpus, with toxin and radiation, and with Bane of Corpus. Since the Synoid Simulor creates gravity wells that deal damage over time, it also deals with nullifiers more effectively than other AoE weapons. I quite like the Synoid Simulor because it's one of the more interesting weapons in Warframe. Compared to most other area of effect weapons, it deals less damage, but it also doesn't stagger or knock you down as much, and it works extremely well against the Corpus. Still, it's very much a multiple target weapon, great at clearing hordes of Corpus, but bad at taking down acolytes and other mini-bosses. So you might want to have a melee weapon or a secondary that can take them down. The Synoid Simulor is worth using with caster frames that need energy, or as a primer and crowd control with radiation procs.